3D printing has been making leaps and bounds over the last few years, with lots of new technologies, tools, softwares, and resins coming out. Despite that, it is a hobby that ultimately is often fraught with mistakes, with messes, with big price budgets, and a lot of learning. It ends up being an entire hobby in and of itself. After all, if we still can't make paper printers work, how can we possibly hope to have easy, accessible 3D printers? We recently had a stream where we talked about HeyGears' new printer, which Brian Poland, my friend and co-founder of Tabletop Titans, had recently purchased, and he seemed very impressed with it. And honestly, Brian was one of the biggest detractors of personal 3D printing, saying that it was just unreliable and too much work for him. But somehow he was convinced with this new device. After the stream, funny enough, HeyGears actually reached out wanting to send us here at the studio our own machine to try out and to see if we'd be interested in making a review talking about our experience with it. Now, I'm always skeptical of magical hobby solutions, whatever they be, so of course I'm going to be taking a look at this printer. HeyGears is naturally the sponsor of today's video because they sent us literally the machine and the printers and all that stuff, but I won't be holding my punches as I take a look at the software and the machine and decide really how it works, is it as good as people say it is, and is it the right 3D printer for you? Let's dive on in and take a look. So specifically, we've been sent the Reflex RS Turbo Combo. This, of course, is going to have the Ultracraft Reflex machine itself, which is the 3D printer, along with their own custom wash station and cure station. We have also a few of their different kinds of resins. In particular, I'm interested in trying out their durable resin because we can be pretty rough with our toys here in the studio. Physical assembly was pretty straightforward. We had a bunch of packages to open and unbox carefully. I will note that if you do need the Allen wrench to tweak some of the settings, that actually was wrapped up with the metal spatula. So let me just save you some panic if you end up buying it yourself and freak out that you've lost a piece the way I did. So it is there. Ultimately, one of my biggest metrics for determining whether I like this printer and whether I'd recommend it to you is how easy it's going to be. It's not the cheapest printer on the scene, and of course, things like their proprietary resin help add to the cost. So ultimately, this thing needs to be easy to use and solve the problem I have, which is just not enough time to focus on learning all the little itty-bitty intricacies of 3D printing. Putting it together, again, pretty straightforward. As soon as you get it plugged in, it actually walks you through step by step. You leave the paper manual behind as soon as possible, and it basically says, okay, here's how you level it. Go ahead and tweak this, raise this side, and make little adjustments for there. So immediately, that was actually a really nice process where it felt like it was there with me in the moment to kind of solve those problems that inevitably do and did occur, which was kind of nice to see how quickly the software actually resolved them. In addition to ease of use, I think another sticking point for this whole set of products is the fact that they're really trying to keep you separated from the chemicals that you have to use in 3D printing, right? So the resins, isopropyl, all those things that are just like not great as humans to be around. And so they've really tried to reduce the contact points with that. There's two main ways they do that. First is the resin bottles. They're pretty interesting. Normally when you get a bottle of 3D print resin, it comes with a normal bottle with a little seal inside. The seal you have to kind of cut out or scrape out, and it's kind of a pain, and I always inevitably end up getting like resin on like gloves or machines and things like that. It's kind of a pain. But these resin bottles come with a two-part seal. So there's an interior nozzle, which you basically only ever unscrew if you're trying to like refill it or whatever. And the main one that you use, you unscrew it and there's actually no direct contact with the resin. It works kind of like a glue stick if you had those when you were a kid, where there's basically this ball inside of it that is kind of pressing up against the out of the nozzle. And so if you hold it upside down, it shouldn't have any resin come out. That is until you insert it into the machine, and there's a little knob that's gonna press up on that ball and essentially allow the resin to pour downwards with gravity. So I thought it was a pretty elegant solution that means that you're gonna be spending a lot less time in contact with the resin and kind of opening yourself up for potential contamination. So the resin bottles are an interesting way to keep you out of contact with some of these nasty materials. The other way is actually using the wash station itself. The way this thing works is it's essentially two fancy tubs that you're gonna wash your models in. What you do is you put your model and your isopropyl in one of them, you seal it up, you put it on their wash machine, which is a big shake table, so make sure you have enough distance on either side of it, and that'll handle that. The interesting thing is though, then the tubs are modular, so you can take the tub that you just used and you basically plug it on top of another one, and you hit the release valve, and what it's going to do is it's going to drain all the isopropyl down from the top into the bottom, allowing you to kind of separate yourself so you're not actually really touching any of the isopropyl except for the little that's left on the model. And if you want to let that just dry, you don't have to touch it at all. The other thing that this does is it actually is going to help start to filter out that isopropyl, keeping it nice and clean for longer. Ultimately, ethically getting rid of contaminated isopropyl is a pain, it takes a lot of work, and it's just, I hate doing it. So this is going to A, make that process easier, and B, make the process have to happen less often. So big fan of that. The curing machine itself is beautiful. It's got lots of different settings. You can do just UV, you can do heat, you can do a combination, and of course, everything is going to be connected with their actual app on your phone, where you can basically have a model go from printing to washing to curing, and once you specify the resin that you're using, it'll kind of import all the settings that you need, and even if you want, text you when everything is ready to go so you know when to check in that resin printer. Supporting models is really time consuming. It takes a lot of skilled labor, and I just don't have that. A lot of the time we have custom models that we need to support, or we need to scale something to a different size, which means you need new supports, and it just takes a ton of time. We have a particular project that we're working on right now behind the scenes that frankly couldn't have been possible without this software, which kind of tells you it works pretty dang well. I dove in to try a number of different tests, largely using the default settings as much as I could, and then kind of tweaking from there. I will say the only error I've run into thus far was the print failed because I literally forgot to clamp the build plate down. So it turns out there's always room for a little user error. The software was shockingly good at supporting awkward models, which is great. Though take note, there are a couple ways that this consistency is accomplished. One is through the use of spherical contact points. Traditionally, you just have a tip that's going to connect to the model, and it's going to really minimize the amount of contact you have with it. With the spheres, of course, it's going to have a much larger contact area, but it does mean, especially with certain types of resin, that it can leave a slightly larger mark, or you'll have to kind of clean these up afterwards as the spheres actually come off. As I mentioned, I was interested in the flexible or durable resin. I think this had a tougher time with those spheres. Ultimately, I ended up actually turning off the sphere contacts on many of my prints. If it's not too heavy, you can support it just fine, and that fixed 90% of my problems. The other way that it creates consistency in its prints is with just being a brute force method. It's going to create a ton of supports and just absolutely support this model the best way it can. I think this is a pretty good approach, honestly, because it's going to be really difficult to find a system that works for every model, and it's kind of a better safe than sorry. This printer isn't the cheapest on the market, but you are kind of paying for that reliability, and this follows the same mindset, right? It's not going to save you the most amount of resin because it's going to have a ton of extra supports, but it will just work. What I've been doing for this thing is I've been kind of reducing the X, Y, and Z spacing of the lattices, and this is going to actually reduce the amount that I need, and I can tweak it and work it back as I get more experienced with it. But ultimately, my goal was for it to work out of the box, which it absolutely did. At the end of the day, this consistency is the #1 reason that I would get this printer. 3D printing is messy and unreliable, so a machine like this that allows me to just get going as soon as possible is amazing. The software itself is pretty fantastic, and I was able to blow through a number of models that I had been struggling to get printed just before I got the machine. Yes, you may want to tweak settings to get things just right, but it's nothing compared to the many countless hours you would normally spend to support these projects by hand. Take note, the software does work across different resins or machines, but at the end of the day, it's going to work best here. I think one of the critiques I've seen about this printer and printer style is the fact that you really want to use and kind of have to use their proprietary resin. Other resins aren't really going to load in the machine, things like that. Ultimately, I think this is a sacrifice worth making. As any experienced 3D printer knows, anytime you do a print, the type of printer that you're using, the resin, the different kind of materials that you're using, the actual model itself and how it's connected, all these things factor in. So the only way that they can reliably deliver a very, very consistent product that would print easily is by making all these things known variables and known factors. They know exactly what temperature and what kind of consistency their materials work with and work at, and they're all tailored towards that. I did, of course, try the supported models with other printers, and they ultimately worked pretty dang well itself, but if you're really getting this for the consistency, kind of easier to keep it all in-house. So yeah, I've been using this machine for about a month now. I've had one big project that's still under embargo that just literally, as I mentioned, could not have been done in time without the HeyGears hardware and software, and I've been testing its limits to see what I can do. I have a trench board in progress where I needed to scale up some awesome 3D sculpts of barbed wire and sandbags. They all needed to be scaled up and individually supported. And for my personal project, a sort of feudal imperial guard, I needed to make some custom and durable lances for my cavalry. I hopped into Blender to sculpt them myself, and then of course brought them into Blueprint to support and printed them on the HeyGears machine. I wanted, of course, to use the durable resin here, as these are very fiddly bits that would traditionally fracture very easy in normal resin, and was pretty dang impressed. There are obviously ways to break the machine, and supports can be a bit overboard, but it does get the job done, and you can tweak them from there. So if you're someone who wants an easy entry into 3D printing, I don't think it comes any easier than this. And while the cost is certainly a factor between the machine and proprietary resin, you really get what you paid for in terms of quality and consistency. I'm very excited to try out the machines and software more, and our undisclosed project is going to be spectacular. So I can't wait to show y'all what it is, how it works, and how we've made it with, of course, all this HeyGear stuff. That's about it for me, folks. I hope it was helpful and helped answer some questions that we've had about the HeyGears line of tools. Don't forget, you can check out the brand new Ultracraft Reflex RS Turbo in the link down below today. And a special thank you to HeyGears for letting me try out their incredible products. I'll catch y'all next time on the tabletop. Bye!